fictional dramatized story inspired by a celebrity talk show scenario. The audience arrived early that morning, filling every seat in the brightly lit television studio. Excitement buzzed through the room because one of Hollywood's most legendary actors was scheduled to appear as a guest. Producers hurried across the floor. Camera operators checked angles, and stage assistants made last-minute adjustments. Backstage, Al Pacino sat quietly in a comfortable chair, reviewing notes about his latest project. At 86 years old, he had spent decades in the spotlight and had learned how to handle interviews of every kind. He wasn't nervous. If anything, he seemed relaxed, occasionally exchanging jokes with staff members who stopped by to greet him. When the show finally began, applause thundered through the studio. The hosts welcomed viewers and introduced their special guest. Moments later, Al walked onto the stage to a standing ovation. Smiling warmly, he waved to the audience before taking his seat. The first part of the conversation went exactly as expected. The hosts asked about his career, his favorite movie memories, and the lessons he had learned after decades in entertainment. Al answered thoughtfully, often making the audience laugh with unexpected stories from old film sets. The atmosphere felt comfortable. Everyone seemed to be enjoying the conversation. Then the discussion shifted. One host brought up the changing landscape of Hollywood and how younger actors were approaching fame. Differently than previous generations, Al shared a few observations, speaking respectfully about both old and new approaches to acting. For a while, the discussion remained friendly. But then Joy Behar introduced a more controversial topic. She asked whether legendary actors sometimes received too much praise simply because of their past accomplishments. The audience reacted with a few surprised murmurs. Al smiled politely and answered that respect should always be earned, regardless of age or reputation. Joy nodded but continued. She suggested that some critics believed Hollywood relied too heavily on nostalgia and famous names. Al's smile faded slightly. He remained calm. He explained that experience wasn't about nostalgia, it was about years of hard work, sacrifice, and dedication to a craft. The audience applauded. For a moment, it seemed the conversation would move on. Instead, another question followed. Joy asked whether some veteran stars struggled to adapt to modern audiences and changing cultural expectations. This time, Al paused before responding. The studio became noticeably quieter. He folded his hands together and carefully chose his words. He said that every generation faces change and that artists constantly evolve. But he also believed there was value in preserving traditions and respecting the history that helped shape the industry. The answer was thoughtful and measured. Yet the tension lingered. One of the other hosts attempted to lighten the mood with a joke, drawing laughter from the audience. But Joy returned to the topic. She referenced several recent online debates and suggested that some viewers believed older celebrities occasionally expected special treatment. A few audience members exchanged nervous glances. Al leaned back slightly. His expression remained controlled, but the warmth from earlier had begun to disappear. He explained that respect and special treatment were not the same thing. Respect came from recognizing effort, dedication, and contribution. Joy responded that public figures should also be open to criticism. Al agreed. But then he added that criticism should be fair. The conversation had now become less of an interview and more of a debate. The audience could feel it. Even the production crew sensed the change. Camera operators shifted positions more carefully. Producers watched their monitors closely. What had started as a relaxed appearance was becoming something entirely different. Joy challenged one of Al's comments, questioning whether some stars viewed disagreement as disrespect. The question landed heavily. Al took a long breath. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then he leaned forward. His voice remained calm, but there was unmistakable intensity behind it. He explained that disagreement was healthy. In fact, he welcomed it. What bothered him, he said, was when complex careers and life experiences were reduced to simplistic headlines and social media arguments. The audience applauded again. Some people nodded. Others remained silent. Joy responded that public figures had to accept public scrutiny. Al agreed once more. But he emphasized that there was a difference between scrutiny and assumption. The exchange grew sharper. Neither person raised their voice. Yet every sentence seemed to carry more weight than the last. Viewers could sense the friction building. The hosts attempted to redirect the conversation toward Al's new project, but the energy in the room had already changed. Questions about movies received shorter answers. The easy laughter from earlier was gone. Then came the moment everyone would later talk about. Joy referenced a particularly harsh online criticism aimed at veteran actors. Before she could finish her point, Al interrupted. Not aggressively, not angrily, simply firmly. He explained that people often forgot there were real human beings behind public reputations. He spoke about the emotional toll of constant judgment and how easy it had become to dismiss decades of work with a few words posted online. The room fell silent. No one laughed. No one interrupted. For nearly a minute, Al spoke openly about perseverance, failure, success, and the challenges of living under public scrutiny. His words were sincere. His frustration was visible. When he finished, the audience responded with strong applause. But the atmosphere remained tense. Joy thanked him for sharing his perspective. Yet the discussion continued to circle back toward disagreement. Finally, Al looked around the table. He smiled politely. Then he stood. At first, many people assumed he was preparing for a commercial break, but he adjusted his jacket and stepped away from his chair. The audience gasped softly. One host looked confused. Another appeared concerned. Joy asked whether everything was okay. Al paused. He thanked the audience for their kindness. He thanked the production team for inviting him. Then he explained that he believed the conversation had reached a point where continuing it would not be productive. His tone wasn't angry. It was disappointed. Calm. Final? The studio became completely silent. After a brief nod toward the hosts, he turned and began walking toward the edge of the stage. The audience watched in stunned silence. A few people even stood. Some applauded. Others simply stared. The cameras followed him until he disappeared backstage. For several seconds, nobody knew what to say. The hosts sat quietly. The unexpected departure had transformed the entire mood of the show. Eventually, the conversation resumed. The hosts reflected on the discussion and acknowledged that passionate disagreements sometimes occur when important topics are involved. Meanwhile, backstage, Al spoke briefly with producers before leaving the building. By the end of the day, clips from the interview had spread across social media. Viewers debated every moment. Some believed Al had defended himself brilliantly. Others felt the discussion had simply become too heated. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. What began as an ordinary celebrity interview had turned into one of the most unforgettable television moments anyone in that studio could remember.